Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Bigfoot's Barber Shop, and of course, Robert Prevost have both already found their way into the darkness of the Fox Den to awaken me from my slumber as we, of course, once again go werewolf, cryptid, and Dogman hunting. Absolutely delicious. I do appreciate both of you allowing me to revamp myself and releasing me from my shackles. Now, without further ado, it is time for Mr. Barber, Robert Prevost, and of course, LordeStarfox to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night. Once again, you are tuning in to Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. We have Bigfoot's Barbershop sitting around the late night fire in the darkness of the Fox Den with, of course, one of the Midnight Society official scientists, Robert Prevost of Monstrous the Podcast, is also already sitting around the late night fire. Mr. Prevost, my guy, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great.
What about Mr. Barber? How are you doing tonight, eh?
Mr. Barber is doing okay. It's been an exciting week.
Boom, you heard that to the audience. That's great stuff. Well, tonight here, as stated, I am going to stir the pot a little bit before we then toss this over to Mr. Prevost, who has a lot more to stir the pot with the good old LBL and reasonings that back up, well, my thought process. And then Mr. Barber is going to chime in to the whole supposed LBL massacre. Some time frames vary actually quite a lot, meaning some say the late 70s, some say the mid 80s, some say the early 80s. All right, well, that's a problem for me right there. We got 4 different time frames. We also have nothing more to back up what has occurred except a perspective from a woman, rest in peace. She is not able to give her side of any of this. Jan Thompson, nothing but love in that regard, and rest in peace, my friend. Yet we are here to talk about this because besides her, the only other person that has spoken about this, which everyone that pays attention to the whole Dogman thing and missing persons aspect, well, we all seem to come to the same conclusion that it's impossible, and I don't like to even use that word impossible, that Roger here, the sole survivor of the LBL massacre, hid underneath this RV while this father, mother, their daughter, and also their teenage son were ripped apart and supposedly shredded by this werewolf-like creature, right? But then Roger here stays underneath the good old RV and then just runs out in the middle of the night. Some local farmer just happens to pick him up. Yeah, no, not buying any of that either. When this occurred here, a lot of people don't realize it is almost past the point of any of these supposed responders being around anymore to even verify this also. Meaning this took place in an area that would have multiple people responding, kind of like where I live in southern Maine. If something was to occur, you would have responders from Gorham, you would have potential officers from Scarborough, Westbrook paramedics, anyone in these little areas of the greater Portland aspect would show up to help. All right. Again, right there, how is anyone going to track down supposedly all these people to speak to any of them? Why have none of them ever spoke about this? And also now we're at the point where they would not even be in existence anymore. Also, again, Jan started this on a 4chan, a Reddit thread, and also some other little hidden spots more or less on the internet. Again, she's not here to defend her reasonings or thought process on this. Being an investigative photojournalist, the research I've done, well, I feel comfortable enough stating she seemed to have an interest in being an author, whether it was an amateur horror writer or what. I don't have enough information on that. Yet the way she words things, the way things are presented, reminds me a lot of some of my friends that are authors. It's just worded in ways that sound similar to a script, in my opinion. Yet again, before we dive some more into why I think this is all pretty much bogus, I would like to first off hear what Mr. Prevo has to say about this, and then pass it on to Mr. Barber as well. And I will be waiting for the mic in return.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Kenny. When you look at whatever Jan Thompson had written, she did originally present it on 4chan. It was one of the subreddits. And like you said, a couple other little places. The way it was written as a writer, I can tell you what she was doing was trying to set the scene and put in a lot of little details that really, if you were trying to tell the story of an account that as it was told to you, a lot of these little details would never even have popped up in there. It would have been much more to the point. And there's, like you said, the time frame's got a lot of inconsistencies. Plus, the original story, of course, is the mother, the father, the girl, the boy. And it was only way after the fact that Roger suddenly appeared in this story and was this guy who was, this kid who placed himself into this story to, give some validity to it by hiding underneath this camper while this was all going on. And somehow this Dogman, this apex predator, couldn't sniff him out while he was under there, had no idea that he was there, even though we know that the predator was probably were watching the entire time and would have been well aware that there was one individual that they were missing. So, it just really doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a story that has hung on for so long, and that so many different podcasters and YouTube channels, everything else has really, ridden on the coattails of, I guess you could say, just to kind of, put in their 2 cents worth. And I really just don't see any validity in the story. I mean, you and I have talked about this before. I think it's one of those stories that really needs to be put to rest. And I really don't see any point in people dragging this out and trying to make it real and trying to make it this, this thing to hang your hat on, as far as, that's got to be proof that Dogman's real. If this wasn't real, well, then Dogman's not real. Well, no, that's not the way science works, so I just don't see any validity in the story. I never have seen any validity in the story. And like you said, it's kind of odd that it's after the fact that you tell this story down the road and nobody can trace anything back. Nobody can find the police officers. Nobody can find any kind of records. Nobody can find any hospital records, anything like that. I mean, people have a hard enough time committing crimes and keeping it hidden. Sooner or later, one of the people who's guilty of the crime is going to end up running their mouth, spill the beans. So, just because these supposed 2 officers came in there and told her about this, which I find kind of hinky as far as the story goes, I just don't buy it. What about you, Brian?
I'm so confused on this one. I don't even know what to say. I don't even have a good opinion because as soon as I first read about it and started looking into it, right away that Roger's name pops up. Once I finally heard the story, it didn't make a lot of sense that as far as if they were out to eliminate the entire family and witnesses, why something that could, with a sense of smell, obviously a dogman would accidentally just let him ride by because he was under the trailer. I mean, they very easily reached under there, pulled the floor up, definitely would have caught him as soon as they even heard him try to scurry under there, would have taken care of business. And as far as actually trying to find, because I do try to, when I sink my teeth into something, I like to find as much information as I can on it. And like you guys already talked about the fact that there's really no concrete days, but everything from, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, even as far as, 88, 89, so late 90s. It's like usually when a traumatic event like that happens, there's at least a general consensus on a timeline, not 10 years that it happened in between. So, you guys are a lot more in tune with this, and I can't wait to hear now that you guys have dug up more information.
Well, first off, beautiful stuff by both of you. Before we throw it back to both of you, no pun intended, I'm going to add a few more spices to the pandemonium we got rocking right now. First off, depending how warm it was outside, depending also on the type of RV and the axle and such, there's a high probability that would have been too hot for, again, somebody to hold on to underneath there. This is supposedly supposed to be happening, what, early summer, midsummer? Again, who knows? Okay, I don't know the temperature frames down in the LBL, Tennessee, Kentucky. I do know that, well, when I used to go to the gym and I was having issues with one of my cars that had a radiator aspect I needed to consistently check on, I could be up in the gym for like 3 hours or so, right, and come outside, and man, that radiator cap and that fluid could still be pretty hot up in there, that I needed to be careful, right? So I didn't singe and burn my face. All right, so that's like 3 hours. That's on a smaller car. Again, this is summertime. I'm just stating something else here. The larger the car, the RV, it would also, maintain heat more, especially pulling all of the rest of the RV, axles twisting, metal on metal. Yeah, I don't buy that. The friction's too much right there. Also, in this area, people have pointed out there was a change in the landscape. Oh no, this has to be a cover up. They would never waste money like that. I hate to break it to anybody out there. I watch my local city waste all kinds of money all the time on stuff. Sure, in a perfect world, you would like to think we wouldn't be wasting money like that if they're not really planning on renovating that aspect. But guess what? If it costs too much money to replace all the water pipes, all the things in the older part of a park, well, it only makes sense then to do a new job as well. Meaning, okay, we're no longer going to send people in this part because the water in the pipes, we can't do that. We've redirected it. This is the new part of our camping ground. What do you mean, StarFox? That just proves that they don't want people in that certain area. Not really, because people went up to that area all the time, and all it is, like I said, just overrun areas that seem outdated. There becomes a point in time where it's not worth the money and time to renovate something that's outdated when you just upgrade it. That's just a little bit more of my thoughts. We now have the aspect that Roger and everybody else claims this family was Amish. Correct me if I'm wrong. What Amish family do any of y'all know that cruises around in a brand new RV? Doesn't that seem to be quite out of the way a true Amish family as claimed would be living? Wouldn't that seem a little bit odd for them to have invested all this money into a nice flashy razzle dazzle RV? Again, a little bit more stirring of the pot. Two more things to add here. Again, This seems like something out of a horror movie. The mother on the inside is completely flattened, destroyed. There's claw marks everywhere. Then these officers realize, wait a second, there's other clothing in here, solidifying there is a seemingly daughter, a son, and a father. Well, then they just walk outside, right? They now see the father with his arm ripped off, but then in the hand is this strange fur. The son is completely ripped apart too, as if he was trying to crawl back into his mother. Now these two deputies are just walking out all around the property, talking to each other. All of a sudden, one looks over, hey man, you okay? Other officer, what do you mean? Yeah, dude, why wouldn't I be? It looks like you're bleeding. Guy looks up, there's blood dripping down from the tree, hitting the brim of his hat, his, sheriff or deputy kind of state trooper hat. Y'all should know. Looking up, they see this female that was the daughter with her back broken and completely. To me, again, that sounds like something from American Horror Stories or such that FX is going to put together. The last thing I would like to say is there are two cases I do subscribe to in the LBL that I am very confident things that have been seen are not potentially verified in the aspect of what the general public knows. One is Glenn, that worked for Kentucky Fish and Game. Jody Cook, the NADP, and many others were able to verify that, yes, he actually did work for Kentucky Fish and Game. There's certain stamps on your pay receipts. All right. This is long before direct deposit, meaning, your paycheck stubs. There's certain numbers and such that align to show if you would actually be working for who he claimed he did. He stocked the LBL with fish. That was his job, to make sure people weren't inappropriately fishing. Everything's good. Well, one morning he's out. He sees this young couple. They wave to him. He waves to them. He starts to come in a little bit closer because he thinks that they're trying to say something to him. All of a sudden, he sees what looks to be an enormous hyena. We've touched on the hyena beast numerous times. Even our buddy Ryan Tremblay's had an encounter with this hyena beast, right? Okay. Well, Glenn claims this thing was crouched down and looked like a hyena the size of a bear. Now he's screaming out to them, trying to inform them, behind you. Well, they think that he's just being playful. They're waving back, smiling. Well, to his horror, he claims this hyena beast jumped on one of them, began quickly mauling them, disposing of them before moving on to the next, and then carrying off both of these individuals into the forest and near these cave systems. Yes, that, in my opinion, is a really interesting one because that gentleman spoke to us, rest in peace. That was something he felt like he needed to get off his chest. And then the final one I do believe in is recently we worked with Blue Eyed Northern and JPBA research team down in the LBL where they have that thermal that looks to be of a female dog woman carrying a pup. Those are the only two cases that are high profile from the LBL that I personally subscribe to. Well, starting with you, Mr. Barber, before throwing it over to Mr. Prevo, what do you think about everything I just had to say, and what else would you like to add, man?
Everything is pretty wild, especially the thermal. I've got to see that. That's crazy good footage. To me, that's the probably going to take the place, and rightfully so, of the Gable film as #1 Dogman evidence now. LBL does got a crazy history with Bigfoot and Dogman, so I can see where she had the setting right as far as the history down there, but as far as the event, I can't wait to hear more what you and Robert have to say about it. So
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you mentioned that it just kind of came to mind. You mentioned that family was Amish. Well, knowing the Amish as well as I do, and knowing, even if they weren't Amish, if they were Mennonites, there's an interesting part in here. Like, so the son who was torn apart, I think was supposed to be a friend of Roger's, which means that Roger would have had to have been Amish too, because
Yep.
see, the deal is when you're a kid and you're in an Amish community, you don't have anything to do with kids from the outside. You're not even allowed to really talk to anybody from the outside until you're a certain age. Um, they don't go to school with everybody else. Matter of fact, most Amish kids grow up speaking Pennsylvania Dutch. Um, yeah, I work with a lot of contractors who are Mennonites, and their kids, they all speak Pennsylvania Dutch, and they learn that as their first language and then start learning English alongside of it. So, yeah, that's kind of a weird thing right there. The second thing is, even if they're Amish or Mennonite or, Scientology, I don't know, whatever they could be, here's the thing. All right, so the bodies were recovered. All four bodies were recovered. What happened to the bodies? Where are they buried? How come we don't know the family name yet? And how come members of their family have never said anything about any of this? I think that's kind of interesting. There's a big gap in here. Who do these four people belong to, and how come none of their family members have ever said anything?
Again, beautiful stuff by both of you. At the end of the day, my job is to be a successful and honest investigative photojournalist. Look up the definition to anyone out there what that is. You try to present things that, well, either discredit or support something. Everything we've spoken about tonight so far solidifies the opposite direction of this being real, meaning there's more red flags than a soccer game, like what's happening here right now. I understand people really want to get to the bottom of this stuff. It's fine. That's great. There is quality cases and information out there. Yet, time and time again, when things are presented, well, what are we doing here? I mean, it's like with the Gable film, okay? Our buddy Mike came on and showed everything. Yet, still to this second, people are commenting on that video, sending me messages saying it's not the same suit. Why isn't he running on all fours? Dude, it was 1987. Like Brian Barber was saying, what was this, filmed on an 8mm camera? What are these people doing here, man? I mean, what else do you want proven out of this? Do we really want to hold on to something that isn't real that bad? Well, that's not good journalism. That's not how I approach things. That is something that people can either support or not get behind. That's okay. But again, at the end of the day, good science and good journalism is honesty and things that push you in the proper direction. Before we do move on to another set of interesting things that Mr. Prevo wanted to present to us, I don't really have anything else I would like to add to this, except that Jan wrote many other things that did tie into the supposed LBL, meaning people being attacked on a dirt bike that were supposedly family members of hers, and her father or uncle finding these ditches with all these bones near an old sawmill. All right, there's a ton of things. But again, here, if she did the LBL thing as a creative aspect, again, she's not here to speak about any of these things. Rest in peace. Does this not also mean there's a very high probability other stories that she's speaking about that come from the same time frame would not potentially just been part of this horror book she's trying to create? That's my last thoughts. I would like to hear what Brian has to say, throw it over to Robert, and then Robert's going to start talking about a few of the other things before we tie this up.
Well, yeah, if she made this up, and I'm going to use one of my personal favorite analogies of people who may have had experiences, but once you hoax something, then that's Todd the Wanker Standing. I think he's had some good stuff, but his desire to prove things so bad, he's been caught, hoaxing. And for her to write something that isn't true, then of course, anything she writes after that, everybody's going to scrutinize, and you can't, unless people come forward from those encounters to say, yes, this has happened, this is the way she wrote it, then yeah, you got to look at them a whole lot differently than as if somebody who had not been hoaxing their entire, anything, their credibility is still intact. Where if this is a case, and like you said, I don't like to speak ill of somebody who can't defend themselves, but if it is the case, then yeah, of course, everybody's going to look at things a little tighter. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, I think the sawmill area that she was talking about, if I remember correctly from the documentary I watched about that, that whole area had been developed, and now there was like houses there. So again, kind of convenient. You can't really go in and research the area because everything that was supposedly there once upon a time is no longer there. So it's kind of hard to go in and investigate the claims that somebody has made when the area that's supposedly where this all took place is no longer there. So yeah, again, like everybody has said, I don't want to speak ill of Jan, and I feel horrible for her family that she's not around anymore. But as far as the validity of the stories, I just can't get behind it. I just can't get behind it. And talking about the stories and the validity of another big story that seemed to be bounced around out there about Dogman, and I don't know why, but these siege stories seem to be really popular. You had, when you look at with Bigfoot, you had Ape Canyon, the incident at Ape Canyon, which was a siege that happened to these miners, and they hid in this cabin. You had the siege of Honobia, which happened in Oklahoma. And so then you also have this one story from Mississippi, which was the Lockett Ranch. And that whole thing came about strictly from what I know from another podcaster. So I've been doing some digging into that, and pretty much everybody is of the same consensus that that's really all it is a story. That this story that he's made up or come up with or somebody else told him is purely fiction. There's no evidence to back it up. Now there are some things Dogman related that are happening in that area, just like is happening with the LBL, but not this big, massive siege where the family was, in the locked up in the farmhouse and everything, and this whole night of terror, which kind of reflects the story from Palmyra, which I actually think probably did take place. There's this need, I guess, for this massive standoff between human beings and these other creatures, whether it's Bigfoot or it's the goblins that happened in Kentucky, or something like that. I don't know. It makes for great stories, but there's never any evidence to back them up, except for of course the goblin one. But yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff going on with the whole Dogman thing. What we need evidentiary stuff. If there's somebody out there who has had a run-in with Dogman, who has been attacked by a Dogman, surely they have gone to the hospital. Surely they have reported it. Surely they have scars and have taken pictures of the attack. I mean, I've got a friend who sent me pictures one night of a horse that had gotten attacked by something, and it had claw marks down the rump of the horse. And we were thinking possibly it was either a mountain lion or something like Dogman because of the way that the claws went down. But you see, there's some evidence there. There's some photographic evidence. There's not a story beforehand and then going to look for the evidence. The evidence was there, and maybe there's a story to go along with it. We don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think, Kenny?
Well, first off, yes, like Robert reiterated, I'm going to reiterate the same thing. I've never once spoken to Jan. I have no qualms with her, right? She's not here to defend herself. I have nothing but respect and love. And like I said, rest in peace. All I'm doing is presenting things that are, well, in the opposite direction of a true event. That's all, right? And I just think that's important. Now to what you had stated, yeah, that's a pretty interesting one as well. I can't verify that at all. I've heard it from, as you stated, not even going to repeat that name, yet it was forwarded to me. I didn't even listen to it. I had somebody else on my team explain to me what had occurred. That should give everybody a little bit of push in the direction of how much I buy into that one as well. Yeah, if something is going to fall as close as it can to reality, then something like the Palmyra case, I mean, to this day, the Martin family spoke about it once. That's it. You can't get a hold of them. Can't find them on Facebook. There's no emails. They're not on other podcasts or any podcast ever. They were on that one TV show, Paranormal Witness. Keep in mind, though, all right, I have spoke to other people that were on that show that said overall they liked how it was presented, yet certain little important pieces of the pie in their eyes were left out. You also have to then again realize there is a high probability that this episode that was presented to us might not necessarily be the entire true version from the Martins family. Meaning Mr. Barber and I spoke about this before. Brian and I had spoke to our friend Danielle Ellie Steedman. She also spoke about how these woods were haunted, changed her story. Brian Seach, one of my good buddies from the North American Dogman Project, was on Monsters and Mysteries in America about the dog boy. They cut and spliced certain things he had said to make it sound completely different than what he had actually said. We all just need to realize that before we start to tie this up and see if Robert has anything else he would like to present tonight, starting with Mr. Barber and then throwing it around. What do you think of that, man?
No, it just goes to show that just because it's on TV or the internet doesn't make it true. And even if it is true, what did they edit to make it their truth, or was it the truth of the actual person who had the encounter? So, in Danielle's case, they left some crucial details out. You got to be careful of and do more diligent research than just seeing one episode of a show and believing it's real.
Yep, absolutely. If you've got an interest in a story like the LBL, like the Lockett Ranch, any of those, Palmyra, whatever it might be, do your due diligence. Don't just take whatever is being presented to you. Do your digging. With the way the internet is set up now, a lot of people, you can reach out to them on Facebook or Reddit or, somewhere, and you can get a hold of them, and they might appreciate you asking them for, the whole truth. And, if one show presents it one way and another show presents it another way, just understand those shows. First of all, they're there for entertainment. That's the number one thing they're doing. They're out there for entertainment. They're trying to get, as many views as they possibly can, because they don't want to just run one season. They want to run 20 seasons. They're in it for the profit. I get that. But I mean, if you have a true interest in subjects like Dogman, really do some digging into it, not just one side of, everything proves that Dogman is there. Take a critical look at it. Don't be afraid to, okay, well, what is the scientific reason behind it? Would it work out this way biologically? Would it work out this way scientifically? How could this possibly even be? Ask the hard questions. Don't just take things for granted.
Boom. Listen to that brilliant stuff by both of you. Well, Mr. Prevo, starting with you, my friend, is there anything else you would like to touch base on tonight? If so, fire away. If not, do give yourself a plug and a shout out. The links will be up in the descriptions as always with the videos. Yet give yourself a plug after you're done. Same to you, Mr. Barber. Any final thoughts, and then where everyone can find y'all?
Well, of course, you can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Reddit. It's Monstrous the Podcast. We're doing a whole lot more of the Cryptid Field Guide. Like I said, we're going to be kicking off Monstrous Lore, where we're going to get deeper into the stories Not just so much focused on just the monsters and the beasts and everything, but also the story behind it. Looking at some of the validity, just, some of the fun stuff. You can follow us on Facebook. You can go to Monstrous, or you can follow Monstrous the podcast, either one on Facebook. And if you want, you can reach me at an email of robert@monstrousPodcast.com. And we have a webpage, which is monstrousPodcast.com. And I'd love for you to go over there. I put up blogs every so often, all kinds of fun stuff. And I'm always trying to add new stuff in all the time.
Oh, you can find me on YouTube, Bigfoot's Barbershop. You can find me on Midnight Lycanthropy as well with Kenny a couple times a week, Camp Nightmare Fuel. And you can always find me on Friday nights at 9 p.m. on the Bigfoot Outlaw Network, and where I host the show, talking a little bit about Bigfoot, a little bit about, behind the scenes things that we don't normally talk about, some conspiracy stuff. And thanks for having me on tonight. Another enlightening evening. Maybe put this LBL thing to rest.
Boom. Beautiful stuff by both you. Heck yes. You heard that, audience. Please do go over. Check out everybody's stuff. It's really important to hit that like button. Give us a few comments. Yes, subscribe. The algorithm loves all these things. Till next time, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, Mr. Barber.
My pleasure.
And same to you, Mr. Prevo.
Always happy to be here. Anytime you need me, I'm free to come.
Ooh, my creatures of the night, I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for hanging out tonight. If you do enjoy our content, please like, comment, subscribe, feed the algorithm, and we will catch you very soon.